Prosecutors in Wisconsin are moving to put Kyle Rittenhouse back behind bars.
Showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source of ABC News. Breaking news. It's live, the 24/7 streaming news source of ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original storytelling.
The rising star's songs now nearly erased from the airwaves, and his record contract now suspended.
It's the only time I can think of really in any genre where somebody just went from being the biggest star to having zero airplay almost in the course of one day.
His downfall coming after video obtained by TMZ showed Wallen outside his Nashville home using profanity and directing a racial slur toward a person in his group. Wallen released a statement saying, "I'm embarrassed and sorry. There are no excuses to use this type of language ever. I want to sincerely apologize." Saying, "This is not who we are," I laugh because this is exactly who country music is. I've witnessed it for 10 years. This isn't the first negative press for Wallen. He was arrested last year for public intoxication and disorderly conduct after getting kicked out of a bar. And in October, Saturday Night Live dropped him from a performance after videos showed him violating COVID-19 protocols. Partying with The Academy of Country Music said Wallen is no longer eligible for an award after a ceremony in April. Details about the market mayhem on Wall Street. Well, if you're very for the shares of GameStop, while also working as a securities broker for Mass Mutual. The company said it was not aware of his online activities.
Just days before the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs had a close shave with disaster. 20 members of the team, including Patrick Mahomes, were scheduled to get haircuts from the same barber. The cutting had started when the barber found out he tested positive for COVID. 2 players were declared close contacts and will be monitored. Lineman Daniel Kilgore was in the chair when the barber had to stop cutting. He poked fun, posting this picture saying, new profile pic.
And speaking of the Super Bowl, we're learning more about Tom Brady's life before he became a star. Yahoo Sports explains how Brady spent a summer in.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thursday. One person in the building, one thumbs up. Thank you so much. Love you, mean it.
Brady is now preparing for his 10th Super Bowl appearance. He says this time it's different.
My family's been out of town for the last 6 days. They're not coming back in town until Saturday. So I really had an empty house for, will be 12 days leading up to the game. That's the most prep I've ever had.
Watch out, with the house to himself, he had lots of time to study game film.
All right, coming up, an unusual date for Valentine's Day.
Also ahead, America's obsession with chicken wings reaching new heights.
Okay, I got your W-2s. Just a few more questions.
That's Dave, a free TurboTax lab tax expert.
Why do you need a tax expert? I've always done those for you.
The taxes are different since I moved out. Besides, Dave's advice is free, and I can file for free.
Hey, Dave, if my son still eats my food, does that make him a dependent?
No. File a simple return for free, now with advice from a TurboTax live expert.
There's nobody that has not been touched by this pandemic.
It's tough right now because, we're struggling.
We have serious demand issues. For the first time ever, we have to have each other's backs.
I see color. Here we go.
We're all in this together, and we have to make this work.
Well, good for this song we got.
22 new seasons, Sunday, February 21st at 9 on National Geographic.
The most powerful stories of all time. Anytime. Not mine.
I know what happened. And I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there. We'll guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Tell all our patients how much they're loved, to hold their hands. David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Breaking news, context analysis.
And no shouting. The time is now for ABC News Live.
Get it streaming everywhere, right to you.
Morning America.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie.
Okay, time to take the pulse. We begin with the night of romance.
That's right. Forget date night. We're calling it paint night. Couples can enter a chance to win an after-hours date at Lowe's.
That's why you said romance there. All right, the winners will spend Valentine's Day at the home improvement store. It's being called a one-of-a-kind experience, complete with intimate splash painting.
Ooh, the couples will use a giant empty canvas, and they get to take their artwork home.
Let's get messy.
Well, whether it's for Valentine's Day or the Super Bowl, Americans are eating more chicken wings than ever.
Yeah, one reason, the pandemic. Chicken wings are a good delivery food because they don't get stuck.
Actually, these storm systems that come in over the same areas and continue to deliver heavy snow to portions of Montana. So Saturday, more on the way for areas like Billings, the I-90 corridor into northwestern Wyoming, with that system moving into the plains. But the snow still continues for some locations all the way through Sunday night. So we're talking some heavy snow with this system, upwards of a foot or two in some areas. The areas in pink, higher elevations, expecting those heavier snow.
Military pilot.
If I am able to get a pilot slot in the Air Force, I want to fly jets.
My goal is already to be a pilot in the Air Force.
My dream is to always be a fighter pilot.
A diversity of pilots that Lieutenant Colonel Hill says he didn't see during his 25 years in the military.
Have someone who you can turn to who looks like you and can say, hey,
Just 25 years, dude, please. You ain't done shit. Ready my 34. Fucking Lieutenant Colonel, what the fuck? It's all right, brother. Anytime you can do it between you, damn so good with me.
progress.
Good work, guys. My goodness. I can barely talk. I miss me go to the hospital.
On November 4th, doctors delivered a baby girl for her, but were worried Kelsey would never get to meet her daughter Lucy.
It's been an emotional roller coaster for sure.
Her husband Derek brought Lucy home to their 3 other children, but as the weeks went on, he was often called in the middle of the night as Kathy struggled to survive. She spent 75 days on life support.
There was many times that we didn't think she was going to make it through the night.
Finally, doctors told the family a double lung transplant was the only option. But after being added to the waiting list, Kelsey's body decided to fight. And to the surprise of doctors, her lungs started to heal. Last week, she was well enough to go home. Kelsey was wheeled out of the hospital to hug her husband for the first time in months. And to finally meet her baby girl, Lucy, for the first time. Hey.
Well, as the days flip on the calendar, schools across the country are really feeling the heat. There's growing pressure to get kids and teachers back in the classroom. Now, we've covered it for days now. In Chicago, the city and some parents want schools to reopen. They were scheduled to return this past Monday, but the teachers union said it's not safe enough, and teachers are now threatening to strike. The two sides are still negotiating a deal, but Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot said it's safe to go back and that she's worried about the students.
Remote learning is just not working for too many of our kids, particularly our Black and brown students. I have to fear for, and I do fear for their future as well, and make sure that I'm an advocate for those children and an advocate for those parents who simply want the option to either bring their children back or stay remote.
We're seeing a similar battle that's happening in California, where the governor has asked schools to reopen. Everyone is learning from home. Some students in Cincinnati returned yesterday after a lawsuit from the teachers union over safety was thrown out by a judge.
Like what you're seeing from Newsy? Maybe you have a suggestion. Well, we want to hear from you. You can get in touch with us at feedback@newsy.com anytime. Newsy, be informed, not influenced.
I'm Adam El-Rashidi, here with Newsy's top headlines for Thursday, February 4th. Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney will keep her position as the number 3 Republican in the House. The House GOP decided on the matter yesterday during a closed-door session, with Cheney getting the nod by a vote of 145 to 61. Afterward, Cheney said the party would not be in a, quote, situation where people can pick off any member of leadership. Cheney has faced backlash for being one of the 10 Republicans who voted to impeach former President Donald Trump last month. She told CNN last night that she absolutely does not regret her vote. House Republicans are also standing behind Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene over calls for her to be stripped of her committee assignments. The House GOP is expected to vote today on whether to defend or rebuke Greene for her history of controversial statements. The first-term Congresswoman has drawn bipartisan fire for embracing far-right conspiracy theories. She's also been condemned for her past endorsement of violence against elected officials and racist beliefs on social media. Republicans said Greene apologized for her comments during yesterday's meeting. The U.S. Embassy in New Delhi has called on India's government to resume talks with farmers protesting agricultural reforms. The government says the new laws are needed to modernize India's farming sector, but farmers argue it puts them at the mercy of corporations. Tens of thousands of farmers have been camping out around the fringes of the capital city since November. The protests turned violent last month when a convoy of tractors breached police barricades, prompting police to forcibly clear demonstrators. Farmer leaders have condemned the violence but said they would continue to protest. In the meantime, the government has suspended internet services in some areas and accused international activists and celebrities of mobilizing support against India. Stay tuned to Newsy for more headlines, plus the latest stories from around the world.
When most of a population is immune to an infectious disease, it provides indirect protection or herd immunity from that illness.
The level of infection is going to go very, very low down in the community and in society. And at that point, the entire community could start getting back to normal.
It does look like the United States might be reaching herd immunity. Again, that's based on looking at the number of daily new infections. It's been going down sharply over the past few weeks.
While case numbers are down, vaccinations, experts say, should be ramping up more. Now, time for the math. With 330 million people in the U.S., experts estimate 75 to 80% of them would need a vaccination or have previously been infected with COVID-19 for herd immunity to occur. That means nearly 250 million people would need to get shots. Right now, about 1 million shots are going into arms each day across the country.
It should be the minimum that you do it. 3 to 5 million would be much preferable.
The concern for experts isn't just the slow pace of vaccinations. Experts say different variants, mutations of the coronavirus, have become the dominant versions in places like South Africa and Brazil. They could slow progress towards herd immunity here.
Because of their partial resistance to that immunity.
Porque salió en el 2001, 2002, y cuando yo hice esta canción.
A los mayores se les debe respeto, pero también debe ser para todos, inclusive para uno mismo. Respetarse a sí mismo también muy, muy importante. Poniéndonos bien a nosotros mismos, dándonos valor y siendo fieles a lo que creemos, ¿verdad? Es verdad. Hoy, precisamente, vine a contarte una historia sobre el respeto.
Me encanta cuando aprendemos a través de historias. Adelante, Tetsuo.
Hace poco conocí a Daiki, un niño japonés. Fue en el patio de su escuela. No era la primera vez que lo veía. Siempre estaba corriendo de un lado para el otro. Pero esta vez... ¡Ouch! ¿Estás bien?
Creo que sí.
Solo me golpeé un poco. ¿Seguro?
¿No?
Ya me voy. Tengo que llegar a la clase. Espera, te ensuciaste toda la ropa. ¿A dónde vas así, tan apurado?
Debo presentar una exposición en ese salón.
Pero si en ese salón ya todos se fueron, yo los vi salir. La clase comenzaba hace más de hora y media.
No, no puede ser. Pero si yo tenía que exponer.
Estás llegando con hora y media de retraso. Se cansaron de esperarte y se fueron. ¿No les avisaste que llegaron?
So in the building, one thumbs up. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. Come on, give me a like now. Two in the house. I should have 2 likes. Come on, 2 likes. Give me that thumbs up now. If you don't know why you watching me and not saying anything. Well, I'm glad you came. Thanks for stopping by. Having a giveaway, guys. I got 3 roses to give out. I need a number from 1 through 50. You are in the sweepstake mode in Carolina Productions. Let's get it. Carolina Diamonds Productions doing a sweepstake right now. Give me a number between 1 and 50. I got something special for you. My throat is hurting. Oh my God, I'm on fire. Of all the damn cigarettes I smoke. No. Anyway. Yes, I can speak Spanish for you guys. I know 17 different languages. Military training. Oh, yes. Oh, que lo emociona. My throat is on fire.
Está tan bueno. Es una mierda porque yo voy a hacer lo que se me da la gana. Dadores más selectivos. El búfalo y solo digiere cerca de 2/3 de lo que come.
Le escapa el hacha, pero qué bárbaro. Tiene un estilo raro para hacha.
Sí, sí,
Oh,
sí.
sí, empieza a correr y mete reversa. Entonces, a la derecha, agarra su primero, agarra el segundo, va corriendo, mete la mano izquierda con todo y maletín y qué bárbara que está.
Como dice, los chulos, pues papá la mujer de aquí, ¿ves? Qué muerte. Hola, ma, hello, ma. Dice que los policitos depois lá, né? Olha que eu chamo, apoiamos aqui. Olha que ele é música, ela pode chachar lá, se. Eu apoiamos lá, não? Ela coxa lá. I'm talking to my computer, y'all.
Y contraseñas.
Hola, me chica la moya. 1, 2, 3, que la puerta para hola, lá, não? Chica palasa. Yes, Bigfoot. MTV videos, yes. I got that on my MTV. Oh, I don't see that shit. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just sitting trying to stream through live streaming different things. Just waking up. Haven't done my morning coffee yet.
Okay, now you can.
Magic tricks are easy to perform, and many of the claims made at school have been dismissed out of hand. But the biggest mystery is this one. How did your image appear on a roll of film that was locked inside a box? Even Houdini would have trouble with that one. Peter Schronek is a photography expert. We asked him to examine images from the skull experiment and try to unlock one of its biggest mysteries.
As I understand it, the film was put into this box and locked away, and the exposure, the effect on the film was supposed to have happened while the film was locked up in this box. My first reaction was, this is an interesting manipulation. I assumed it was something that would have been done in the darkroom. It looks very similar to the kinds of distortions, collages, manipulations that people have done in the darkroom because it's fun to do.
But there was no darkroom at Skull. Was this photograph created by the spirit? Peter believes the answer to the mystery lies in the type of film they used.
With Polaroid, you have the direct development, so there's no darkroom involved. When you process it, you actually put it into a container that is full of a gelatinous chemical that gets spread onto the film evenly. And that is the chemical that develops the film, contains the dyes that causes the color, and so on. And so you have this jelly-like substance that's being spread over the film to develop it. You're cranking that through by hand or sometimes by motor. And depending on how you crank it, you can get different kinds of distortions and effects simply because for chemical reasons. And that, in my mind, is what's happened in these photographs. All you're seeing are the chemicals that are the way that they've affected the film as it's gone through. What is harder to explain are the actual faces, the images. They're not light effects. They're not chemical effects. They actually are images of faces.
So how was this haunting image created?
My explanation for that would be that the film has been tampered with, and the film has been put through the camera, and these faces have been exposed into it prior to the supposed experiment. And then when it's processed, these show up, but they show up in distorted fashion because of the chemical processing distortion. And that actually is quite easy. You can take a roll of film. I can take this sort of brand new roll of film, no one's ever done anything with it. I can take it, I can put this film in the camera, I can shoot the roll of film, I can wind it back, and as I wind it back, I can leave the leader sticking out like this, and no one knows whether this film is exposed or not.
Peter believes he has solved the mystery. But what if the Skull researchers were telling the truth?
I don't think while the film was in the box that any of the effects that we're seeing could have been created unless one believes in some sort of supernatural explanation.
Is this a woman from the spirit world? Did Robin Foy and his research team find proof of life after death at Skull? Or was it an ingenious hoax? Whatever the truth is, this is you.
Not just here talking about a Ouija board.
In Haiti, a man dies after a sudden and mysterious illness. 18 years later, he returns from the grave. Could this prove that zombies exist? When it comes to the mysteries of the afterlife, perhaps, there's nothing weirder than zombies. The dictionary describes a zombie like this: the body of a dead person given the semblance of life, but made mute and willless by a supernatural force, usually for some evil purpose. Sounds like my bank manager. But could it be true? Could mindless, shuffling cannibals actually exist? outside of Hollywood. The tiny nation of Haiti is home to many mysteries, but none weirder than the tale of a man named Clarius Narcisse. Wade Davis is an explorer and author. He investigated the case, which began in 1962 when Narcisse suddenly became violently ill.
I mean, the constellation of symptoms that he reported were so strange that you initially thought this had to be coming from the realm of science fiction.
Although doctors worked feverishly, it's too late to save the stricken Narcisse.
The death was witnessed by both the physicians and nurses and his own family members, and his sister had actually affixed her thumbprint to the death certificate, verifying that this was her brother. Her brother had died.
Devastated, family members say their final goodbyes, and Clarius is finally laid to rest.
You could go to his grave site where the slab of cement had been placed upon his grave shortly after his demise.
It should have been the last anyone heard of Clarius Narcisse. But 18 years later, something incredible will happen that ensures no one forgets his name. In 1980, Clarius' sister is going about daily chores in her family village. Suddenly, she sees something beyond comprehension. Standing before her is her deceased brother. Clarius Narcisse has risen from the dead.
He claimed that he was buried. He claimed that he was magically resuscitated by a sorcerer, and that led off to the north of the country where he'd been working as a sort of zombie slave for 18 years. Now, clearly there's no economic incentive to create an indentured force of labor in a country where costs of labor are trivial. I think the idea of slavery ties into a deeper concept, which is that the essence of a zombie is someone who has lost their soul. But in addition to being cast in perpetuity into the state of limbo, you're also said to be made a slave. And of course, given the colonial history, that combines to create a kind of phenomenon that's almost worse than that. You lose your personal willpower and your physical freedom. And together that combines to make the plight of a zombie the worst possible fate of the individual, which is precisely why in Haiti.
Come on, guys, give me a number to 1 through 50 for a rose giveaway. Light it. See? Smells good, and you see the light down there? Just for me making 500 subscribers. This is for you. You love me? Mean it? Put a comment over here or something so you can win this. This prize 1 through 50, guys. Let's get it. Well, you might not want to say anything. Thank you for 1 thumbs up. 1 is in the building. We'll be back to the documentary. Very good knowledge, guys. What would you do with something weird? Oh, in my life. God, this is great.
After months of searching, the investigators come to a remarkable conclusion.
Really led 2 very reputable scientists to go public saying they had found the first provable victims of the zombie.
Did the scientists rise from the dead? 2 zombies exist. Stephen Schlossman is a Harvard psychiatrist. Incredibly, he believes the answer could be yes.
When I started thinking about how I would explain zombies medically, it was kind of a lark, and then it ended up getting a little creepy. The typical zombie, in my view, is slow, shambling, can't figure even the simplest of dilemmas out, wants to eat human flesh. There is ways you can medically explain the behavior.
Remarkably, Schlossman believes just a few changes in the human brain could turn one of us into one of them. It starts with the cerebellum.
This is a sheep brain, but imagine this is a human brain, which looks an awful lot like this, just bigger. The function of the cerebellum is to help us maintain balance. In zombies, we've got to think that there's something not right with their cerebellum because zombies are really not balanced well. They hold their hands out so they can maintain balance. They've got that wide-based gait. They've got truncal ataxia, which is when the trunk of the body moves back and forth and up and down. That's all cerebellar disease. And it's easy to sort of think that whatever causes the zombie plague must take a whack at the cerebellum. There's a number of diseases that can affect the cerebellum. In those cases, you have exactly the shambling gait that you see in the zombie movies.
The shuffling is one thing, but what explains a zombie's mindless violence?
The amygdala is the most primitive part of the brain. It's the region of the brain that has very base emotions.
Our amygdala is the source of all anger and rage, but it's kept in check by our frontal lobes, the most advanced part of our brain.
So we might have an impulse when somebody cuts us off on the road to yell at them, to tailgate them, to do something not nice. The frontal lobe jumps in and stops you from doing that. When we watch zombie movies, we can guess that zombie frontal lobes are pretty much gone. They can't hold back their impulses.
Could a unique combination of brain injuries somehow create a zombie? There's just one problem.
The zombie, by definition, has to die and be reanimated. There is no medical basis for something coming back from the dead so far.
But how does Schlossman explain that Clairvius Narcisse was certified dead, buried, then returned from the grave?
Maybe he's not telling the truth. He's undergone some kind of neurologic insult that prevents him from remembering what's just happened. But if we're talking about really rising from the dead, that doesn't happen.
A Haitian man dies from a mysterious illness and returns from the grave 18 years later. Is he proof that zombies exist? Davis has investigated the case and has an incredible theory. He thinks Clairvius Narcisse didn't die at all, that something made him just seem to be dead. But who or what could have fooled the doctors?
There are lots of drugs that can kill, but to find a drug that brings you to the doorway of death and then brings you back into the realm of the living would be remarkable indeed.
In 1982, Davis made a breakthrough. He discovered that Haitian voodoo priests were rumored to be using a special poison to turn people into zombies. Was this the drug he was looking for? He decided to visit Haiti and see for himself.
Through a series of negotiations, I was able to get a local priest to make this poison for me. I collected all the raw ingredients, which ranged from, dried toads to dried fish, dried snakes, plants, human remains. I collected all the raw ingredients so I could identify them taxonomically, all the different stages of the elaboration, because fundamentally the ingredients are roasted on a grill, pounded in mortar and pestle, sifted and to create this sort of powder. And I brought them all back through U.S. Customs, and it was kind of amusing because I came through for the first day on Easter Sunday, 1982, Kennedy Airport, and I had no permits whatsoever, and I had this suitcase made of surplus 7-Up cans that had been printed in Saudi Arabia because you could see the Arabic script, and it was filled to the gunnels with all these ingredients, including human remains, a human skull. I had a live Bufo marinus toad, the biggest toad, this big, in my backpack, and no permits whatsoever. And I opened this up, and the customs guy in New York just slammed it shut, and he said, and I quote, "Look, it's Easter Sunday. I don't know who the you are. I didn't even want to have to work today. Just get out of here."
Back in the U.S., Davis takes the poison to be tested in the lab. finds something extraordinary. It contains a chemical more deadly than cyanide.
Tetrodotoxin acts by physically blocking nerves, but it brings on a state of apparent death so profound that it has many times fooled physicians.
Had the Haitian priests discovered a drug that could replicate death? If so, where did they get it?
In Haiti, there's this sort of famous puffer fish, which inflates like a big porcupine. Without doubt, the Haitian sorcerers had identified a natural product that contained a toxin that could some appear to be dead.
Could this powerful drug produce the symptoms Narcisse experienced?
Said he was paralyzed. He could hear himself pronounced dead. He could sense the sheet pull over his eyes. He heard his sister begin to yell, but he could not respond.
Was it innocent man turned into a zombie?
No one knows if Narcisse was administered the poison. What we do know is that he was pronounced dead when he turned back around the living. So presumably, accurate somehow he received the poison. According to what he said, the poison was rubbed in his skin. And this was important because the folkloric idea that you read in the literature is that poison is placed on a cross on the ground, the victim walks over, and suddenly all things unravel. Well, that's a magical idea, no doubt, because obviously, physiologically, no poison is going to go through the callous feet of the peasant. But again, this is where you have to separate out what might be called the view from within from without. According to Narcisse, he had the poison rubbed into his skin. And this would be important because the effective way for this powder to be administered would be through blood.
All right, let's think about this for a second. We know that a certain set of brain alterations, diseases, or injuries could cause the zombie-like symptoms you see in the movies. But the mysterious poison has a power to mimic death, but is there any real proof that we can return from the dead? Well, let me tell you something. The living dead are living among us. And they're in Detroit.
Detroit?
At a warehouse in Detroit, something remarkable is happening. Inside these containers, 103 people are waiting to return from the dead. This is a cryonics center. The people entombed here have made an incredible choice to have their bodies frozen after death, with the hope that science will one day bring them back to life. Ben Best is the president of the Cryonics Institute. He believes not only can we survive death, but that the people here haven't actually died.
We do call them patients because we don't regard them as being dead in an ultimate sense. I think in practice, I do go to the hospital. I think that's what we're doing. We're holding these metabolically challenged patients.
Good morning, guys. I think I got to do something. I went to the doctor, but I feel better by 12 a.m. I took that COVID-19 shot, and I just feel like shit this morning. I really do. Oh, Jesus. One in the building, one thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for being here on this beautiful Thursday morning. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those our debtors. Let us not forget our debtors, lead us not into temptation. Love us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever. In Jesus' name. Let the Redeemer say, Amen. Have a blessed Thursday, guys.
Liquid nitrogen, which is at minus 196 degrees Celsius.
I'll check it out. Very interesting. Them Chapman. 2 minutes, guys.
Best believes cryogenics has changed our definition of death. Only a few decades ago, if your heart stopped, that was it.
But it's just not the way we see things anymore.
How do you keep someone who is dead? It begins by pumping oxygen-rich blood throughout the body. This keeps cells alive and avoids damage caused by rigor mortis. Then, the body must be cooled.
And we don't just drop the patient in a liquid nitrogen. That kind of rapid cooling will be very damaging. So we try to cool in a controlled manner. If you cool too quickly, and you get too much cracking. You can't prevent cracking entirely, but certainly if you just drop the patient directly into the nitrogen, there'll be a lot of cracking and shattering. What we want to do is we want to cool as quickly as possible while the cryoprotected medical grade antifreeze is still in a liquid state. And then when it solidifies, we want to cool very slowly. Because while it's in a liquid state, the idea you want the colder the better. But when it becomes a solid, if you cool too quickly, you create thermal stress.
Body temperature is slowly lowered first by an ice bath, and then in a cooling chamber where it will reach minus 196 degrees. Best believes this will preserve these bodies for hundreds or perhaps thousands of years. But why?
It seems to me as if you're preserving all the material there, that some future technology is going to be able to figure out a way to get that all and going again. It's reasonable to think that nanomachines can restore the person to their original condition.
Nanomachines already exist. Tiny machines smaller than a single cell. Scientists believe they could soon flow through our bloodstream, targeting viruses, repairing organs, and destroying disease. Can cryogenics give us life after death? Could it even conquer death itself? Best believes it is our greatest hope for eternal living.
Doesn't seem so much more unreasonable than to speculate that people will someday live on Mars.
Can we die and wake up 1,000 years later and resume our lives? And even if we can, would we really want to? Or do we return as zombies, doomed to a mindless existence? Is life after death? Weird. Or what? So there we have it. Stories of life after death from all over the world. In Connecticut, a man is overcome with emotion at a Civil War battlefield. Is he the reincarnation of a dead general? In England, scientists conduct a remarkable paranormal experiment. Did they find the first proof of the afterlife? And in Haiti, a man returns from the grave 18 years after his death. Are the living dead walking amongst us? Do zombies exist? Are these stories evidence of life after death? Can we dismiss those who claim they are true? You decide. Join me again next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird or what? You know, I've been around for a while. Met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. So you just might think that there's not much that can take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories, science, and things that amaze and confound me. Every single day, incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer. Others just defy logic. 7-foot winged demon did of 46 people.
It had two huge black wings and no head, no arms.
In Newfoundland, a macabre creature washes up on a local beach. Are our oceans concealing a megabeast?
It was nothing that either of us had ever seen or could imagine.
And in New Delhi, thousands are attacked by a metal-clawed monster. Was it a man or a beast?
People ran off in absolute panic. They just were fleeing from the scene.
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it. You know, I just love hobbies. Even went to Loch Ness for Nessie. Famous Loch Ness monster is supposed to live. Got on the smoke, on the lock, searching for hours. And guess what I saw? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Total waste of time. And $6. A monster's nothing more than bait to lure gullible tourists. Do things like Yeti, Bigfoot, and Chupacabra exist?
Bigfoot. Yeah, they do exist.
I don't agree. They just might.
I believe so too. There is a Bigfoot Sasquatch.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Nearly 50 years ago, this sleepy farming town was brutally awoken by a series of monstrous events
When you explore
that are still a mystery
the
today.
content, check it out.
Lauren Coleman is an author. He documented the incidents, which began on the night of November 15th, 1966, when two young couples took a drive.
Roger and Linda Scarter and the Mallets were driving around on the old TNT area. It was called TNT because that's where dynamite was stored during World War II.
Secluded and dark, TNT was also a well-known lover's lane. But instead of fun, the four teenagers are about to encounter a living nightmare.
All of a sudden, they see this creature. It's 6 feet tall, and it's coming to them. It's having glowing red eyes, which are reflecting the headlights. It had two huge black wings, no head, no arms. All of a sudden, it goes into the air and starts flying. They started racing back to Point Pleasant, and the creature was in back of the car. Really, they felt it almost was touching both sides of the highway. Red glowing eyes, no arms, just these huge wings.
Reaching speeds of 100 miles an hour, the chase continues until finally the creature disappears. Was there something unpleasant in Point Pleasant?
The next day, they come back out there and they see it flying overhead. So all of a sudden, you get more and more kind of word of mouth in the town. This creature's been around, people are seeing it. The newspapers hadn't even caught on to the report yet. So the next day, you have Marcella Bennett saying she's going over to one of her relatives' houses, which it's a bunch of houses right along the road that leads to the TNT. She gets close to the house, and all of a sudden on the roof of the house, sees the Mothman. She's carrying her baby in her arms and falls on the baby. out of terror and fright. Stuff races off, and they tell the police too. What occurs, however, is that it's then that it gets into the newspaper, and all of a sudden, you had within a few weeks, 200 people saying that they'd seen the Mothman.
This remarkable story through the town. The media calls the creature the Mothman. Local resident Faye Laporte was 14 years old at the time. 3 days after the first sighting, she decided to visit the scene for herself.
That's the road over there that we drove down, me and my brother, to come out here to try to find the so-called Mothman we heard about. My brother said, well, I'm just going to see if I can find it and prove that it's just somebody in a Halloween costume or something on wires or something. As we got to the area, my brother kept looking past me to the window. I said, well, what is it? What are you looking at? He said, well, don't look right now. He said, but there's something beside the car there by the window. So he slammed the brakes on and just like it was nothing, just leaped right up on the car. Even though it was dark, you could still see the eyes. The eyes held me. The most red, I can't explain the red. It's just was such a red that I just can't describe. It's just like a color that it looks like they're really lit up, but it's not a glow, but it's perfectly lit up that you cannot miss it. And it's like, that's all you see when you look at it. It had the features of a bird combined with a human. We were really scared, and I was begging and crying for my brother to go ahead and let's get out here. That's when I finally saw it open up its wings and just flew off in the sky so pretty. It was gone. Jesus.
For the next year, the Mothman terrorized the people of Point Pleasant.
We looked right here. We looked around the thing. That was good there. We thought it was a car. I was top of the car thinking it was top of the car. Well, I just think it's something supernatural we can explain something like that. I know I can't explain it, that's for sure.
They wonder where it will all end. 13 months after the first sighting, they get their answer.
The Silver Bridge between West Virginia and Ohio, starting at Point Pleasant, collapsed on December 15th, 1967. 67 people fell into the water of the Ohio River. 46 died, and 2 bodies never were even found.
There's seemingly no apparent reason for this horrific tragedy. Then comes a terrifying report. The night before the disaster, the Mothman was seen hanging from the Silver Bridge.
And people were scared. They were so scared they didn't want to talk about the bridge. They didn't want to talk about Mothman. They didn't want to talk about anything. This town became quiet. And everybody for a long time said that nobody talked. And you still have people that won't talk about the bridge collapse today.
The Mothman was never seen again. For 45 years, this incredible story has baffled experts. But some believe recent evidence could finally explain the mystery of the Mothman. Joe Nickel is a paranormal investigator with Skeptical Inquirer, Science magazine.
We human beings misperceive all the time. People say, I know what I saw. Actually, they know what they think they saw.
Joe believes the Mothman wasn't quite the monstrous beast it was made out to be.
I believe the barred owl is the creature that most clearly fits the bill.
Was the Mothman simply an owl? Nickel thinks the answer lies in Linda Scarberry's first descriptions back in 1966.
Original description of Mothman is of a very large winged creature. She said it had no neck, virtually no real head, just eyes, very large eyes, round and shining like a bicycle reflector. In the owl family, there are different degrees of what's called eye shine. Among the most potent is that of the barred owl, which has a deep crimson eye shine. It's a large owl with big wingspan. It would look like just eyes set at the top of the body with wings up. It flies in a silent moth-like flight. It has pretty much exactly the characteristics of Mothman, the original sightings.
But does Nichols' theory explain the height? Eyewitnesses reported a creature that was 6 or 7 feet tall.
We know that people misperceive, and I'm quite confident that somebody looking and not knowing what it is at night quickly, maybe being frightened by it, I dare say I would misjudge the distance and therefore misjudge the height. Keep in mind that the barred owl does not fly around with a yardstick in its claw for measurement purposes. So if you're looking at it and you don't know what it is, because it's a funny looking creature, so I think that people misperceived the distance and therefore misjudged the height. They were excited and they kind of focused in on it, and that also made it loom large in their consciousness. Barred owls were at